Hello everyone, Jolene here from Bookworm Adventure Girl. Welcome back. And if you are new, thanks so much for checking out my channel. Please hit subscribe and stick around. I know I've gone MIA again. I haven't posted too many videos, but I am still around. AJ and I will both be posting our next Tuesdays with Tony videos. That will happen in the near future. We both have other things going on in our lives that are just kind of taking our attention away from BookTube for now. So once we get that sorted out, we will post those. And as before, I wanted to make sure that I posted my Reading Across Canada video because I know that some of you will be looking for some recommendations for that for July. So today I am going to be talking about the Reading Across Canada 2023 Challenge. And I'm also going to talk a bit about my visit with another Canadian booktuber. So stay tuned to that at the end. The Reading Across Canada Challenge has been just a lot of fun and has introduced me to new authors. And the whole goal of this challenge is to get people reading more Canadian authors and Canadian stories. So each month we focus on a different province or territory, and we have a prompt for anyone who, wants to follow the prompts, but you definitely don't have to in order to join in. Bare minimum, you just need to read some CanLit. So if you want more info, I will leave a link to my introductory video in the description box below. So you can go and learn all about it. And then I will also leave links below to the tracker. Do I have a? Yes, the tracker that you can use. And I will have the schedule and the prompts below as well. So during the month of June, we are in Quebec. And if you were following the prompt is to read a book by a French Canadian. And I'm going to share the book that I chose to read this month, and then I will give some suggestions for July when we head into the Maritimes with New Brunswick. So let's take a look at Quebec first. There are a number of things that make Quebec distinct. It is the largest province in Canada by area. Canada has two official languages, English and French. Quebec, though, is the only province whose official language is French. So the two biggest cities are Quebec City and Montreal. Both are lovely. Quebec City, especially like the old city, feels like you are walking in Europe. It has the cobblestone roads, little cafes, and of course the famous Le Chateau Frontenac, which is the world's most photographed hotel. And the city also hosts a world famous winter festival or winter carnival. Montreal also has a neat vibe to it. It hosted the Olympics in 1976. And I would say probably the most famous people that everyone would know from Quebec would be Celine Dion, Leonard Cohen, and William Shatner. So this is the province that I have had little exposure to the literature, mostly because I'm not fluent in French. But as the literature is being translated to English, I am trying to learn more about Quebec writers and read their stories. So the book that I chose to read for June was Autopsy of a Boring Wife by Marie-Renée Lavoie, and it's translated from the French by Ariel Aronson. Both of them live in Montreal, and I just finished this book yesterday. It was a very quick read, and I've probably mentioned this before, but I first heard about the book and the author when it was longlisted for Canada Reads in, I think it was 2021, I think. So this is the first of a series, and I will probably read the sequel when I get a copy, but it's not like too high on my priority list. I liked this book, but I didn't love it. The main character is Diane. She's in her late 40s when her husband leaves her because basically he finds her boring. and he's been having an affair with a much younger woman. So as the title suggests, as I said, he leaves her because she's boring. And the major change in Diane's life forces her to really look at herself and her life. So this isn't a book where a lot happens. So it started off strong for me, and I thought that it was going to maybe be a funny book, but even that didn't quite live up to my expectations. There's some funny lines, but I think what Diane goes through, so the loss of her marriage and other losses as well, are very relatable. In fact, some of the things that happen to her and that she does, like, I can definitely relate to at the moment. So I did appreciate that. I also appreciated how it showed the process of her accepting what was happening and her new reality. I thought that was done really, really well. There's also some, secondary characters, and I'd say a side story that I thought was good. But this isn't really a story where you get a lot of meat to it. At the end, she kind of talks about her kids, and I thought they could have been more in the story. They could have been included more. I felt like at the end it was done kind of quickly to finish the story without really developing the story. It ends a little hastily, but still, it kind of does it with a neat bow, which it doesn't feel as real as some of the other things in the book. So since this is a French book, I was interested to see how that was in the story, and it did include a bit of French and some references. So my guess is that there might be a number of things that I didn't even get because it would be lost in translation. So I'm glad that I read this, and if you are interested in reading translated CanLit, if you like character-driven novels, and I would say novels about marriage, and I would say stories with a main character who is kind of reflecting on her life and herself, then this might be a good book for you. So next month, July, we are heading to New Brunswick, which is the first of Canada's maritime provinces. And if you are following the prompts for each month, the prompt for July is a book about family. And you can define that however you want. It can be about siblings or found family, marriages, whatever kind of family relationship, and whatever works for you. And as always, you don't have to follow the prompt at all. There's no place. There's no place for this. So the first author that I want to suggest is Deborah Joy Corey, who was born in New Brunswick. And the book of hers that I have read and have on my shelf is The Skating Pond. And it takes place in Maine, which is where Deborah Joy Corey, that's where she lives now. I gave this book 5 stars, and although it's been a long time since I've read this, and I can't remember all of the details, I do remember that it made me feel something. It stayed with me for a while. It had made an emotional impact. I remember it being intense. The main character is Doreen Johnson, and her family experiences a tragedy, and it is how this tragedy affects her. Now, she has 2 other books that are also on my radar that also fit the prompt. Her debut novel is Losing Eddie, and this story is set in southeastern Canada, and it is about a struggling family. I think the story is narrated by a young girl who observes this family from outside. And then if you prefer nonfiction, Settling Twice, Lessons from Then and Now is a memoir that explores Deborah Joy Corey's own family, her childhood while she was growing up in New Brunswick, and then her roles as being a wife and mother. So next up is a well-known Canadian author that has been on my radar for a very long time, and for whatever reason, I have still never picked up any of his books, and that is David Adams Richard, who was also born in New Brunswick. The book that I really, really want to read won the Giller Prize, and it's called Mercy Among the Children. So the synopsis for this is so compelling to me. The main character is Sidney Henderson, and Sidney pushes a friend off a roof when he's 12 years old, and when it happens, he vows that if his friend lives, he will never harm another soul. And the friend is fine, and Sidney keeps his promise. And then fast forward to when Sidney has a son who tries really hard to protect him, when a child is killed in a tragic accident and Sidney is blamed for it. So this sounds like it has a bit of a mystery or thriller vibe to it, and it also has to do with family, you know, protecting family and family legacy and that kind of thing. Another book that's on my radar from David Adams Richard is kind of connected to Mercy Among the Children, because it also has the character of Sidney Henderson. So the book is called Crimes Against My Brother, and it sounds to me like a coming-of-age story. So there's 3 boys who make a pact, a blood bond basically, and there is a tragic accident and it affects them all in various ways. And as their lives take on different paths as adults, they realize that somehow they are still all connected, and in some very surprising ways. So David Adams Richards has several other books to choose from. He's, definitely an author that I want to read. So if you are looking for something a bit different, you can check out his other works. He has fiction and nonfiction, poetry, and short stories as well. And then the last author that I want to suggest is another author that has been on my radar, but I have yet to read, and that is Sally Armstrong. She has written a number of novels, but the one that I want to highlight is her historical fiction, and it's called The 9 Lives of Charlotte Taylor. Charlotte Taylor lived in 1775, and at 20, she boarded a ship to Jamaica with the family's black butler. Shortly after arriving in Jamaica, Charlotte finds herself alone and pregnant, and she would go on to have 3 more husbands, 9 more children, and have a lifelong relationship with an Aboriginal man. So the author, Sally Armstrong, is Charlotte Taylor's great-great-great-granddaughter. And I have a feeling that Charlotte is an interesting character that I will really, really enjoy. So these are some of the books that are on my radar for next month for New Brunswick. This is definitely not an exhaustive list. There are so many more authors. So if you know of any, or you are reading something for the challenge in July that you want to suggest to others, please share your choices in the comments below, so that it will help everyone who is already looking for more options. And I will also leave a link in the description box below with a variety of New Brunswick books. There are children's books, fiction, nonfiction, and like a variety of genres. So you can definitely check that out as well. It's a list from CBC Books. So I also wanted to share with you that I finally met another booktuber and another Canadian booktuber in real life. So I was in Edmonton for a conference earlier in the month, and I was able to take some time to meet Lindy from Lindy's Magpie Reads. I have to say that it was like walking into Lindy's BookTube channel, and if you already follow Lindy, you know that she is lovely. She has a calming presence, a lovely energy, and she's really like that in real life. So I also had the opportunity to meet her sweetheart, as Lindy says. Lori is also wonderful. And if you've watched some of Lindy's videos, you know that, sometimes she films her videos outside in her garden. And I really enjoyed being in her garden and just being surrounded by nature. And then if this isn't already enough, it was already fantastic, you may also know that Lindy is super creative in a variety of ways. And she recently talked about the ice creams that she had made. I got to sample 4 of her ice creams and they were all delicious. So thanks again to Lindy and Lori for having me. I did really enjoy our visit. So please let me know if you are reading along. Let me know what you read for Quebec and the month of June, which I can't believe June is like almost over. And then if you already know what you're reading in July for New Brunswick, I'd love to hear all about that too. As always, thanks so much for watching. I look forward to chatting with you in the comments. Enjoy the rest of your day, and don't forget to make every day an adventure.